In early 2026, the fragile balance of the Middle East once again trembles under the weight of escalating tension. Headlines across the globe speak of confrontation, retaliation, and warnings that sound increasingly final. The long-standing hostility between Iran and United States has entered a new and dangerous phase, one that many fear could spill beyond political rivalry into something far more devastating. Reports describe precision strikes and counterstrikes. Military installations have been targeted. Strategic sites have been threatened. Each side accuses the other of provocation. Each side claims defensive necessity. And with every statement issued from Tehran or Washington, the rhetoric grows sharper, less diplomatic, more absolute. In the waters of the Persian Gulf, tension hangs like heavy fog. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow artery through which a significant portion of the world's oil flows, has once again become a symbol of global vulnerability. Naval forces patrol with heightened alert. Commercial shipping companies reroute vessels in fear of disruption. Energy markets react nervously to every new development. This is no longer distant political theater. The implications ripple outward, to Europe, to Asia, to every nation dependent on stability in the region. Leaders gather in urgent meetings, diplomats call for restraint, analysts debate red lines and consequences. The word escalation repeats like an echo in every broadcast. There are whispers about nuclear capabilities, speculation about enrichment levels, discussions about deterrence strategies. Though no missiles of that magnitude have been launched, the mere possibility casts a long shadow over the global conscience. The memory of past wars in the Middle East lingers, reminders of how quickly regional conflict can transform into something far wider. But beyond the military maneuvers and political calculations, there are ordinary people. Families in cities who hear distant explosions at night, parents explaining sirens to children, young soldiers standing watch, uncertain whether the next hour will bring calm or catastrophe. In both nations and in neighboring countries caught in between, anxiety grows quietly, personally, painfully. The world watches with a mixture of fear and fatigue. Some argue this is geopolitics as usual, a cycle of power, deterrence, and strategic signaling. Others warn that the margin for miscalculation is dangerously thin. A single mistake, a single overreaction, a single strike too far, and suddenly a regional confrontation could ignite into something the world is not prepared to contain. The question pressing upon the global conscience is not merely who will respond next, but how far this spiral will go. Is this a struggle for security? Is it retaliation for past wounds? Is it ideology? Is it survival? Or is something deeper unfolding beneath the surface? Because history shows us that wars are rarely born in a single moment. They are formed in layers: resentment, pride, fear, ambition, mistrust. And when those layers ignite, the flames are not easily extinguished. As the tension between Iran and the United States intensifies, the world stands at a crossroads once again. Diplomacy still speaks, but so do weapons. Leaders promise strength, but strength can sometimes become stubbornness, and stubbornness can become tragedy. So now, as we stand in 2026, watching events unfold in real time, we must ask ourselves, is this only politics or something deeper? And I want to hear from you. What do you think about this conflict? Who do you believe is right? Who is wrong? Is this defense or provocation? Necessary action or avoidable escalation? Or do you think the truth is more complicated than choosing sides? Let me know your thoughts below.
Long before modern missiles, long before nuclear negotiations and satellite surveillance, there lived a quiet Polish nun whose visions were not of politics, but of eternity. Her name was Saint Faustina Kowalska. She was not a theologian, not a political leader, not a strategist of nations. She was a humble sister who claimed to have seen heaven, hell, and the trembling line between justice and mercy. In her spiritual writings, she described moments when she was shown the consequences of sin on a global scale, not merely personal wrongdoing, but collective rebellion. She spoke of a world drifting away from God, unaware of the weight of its choices. Yet at the center of her message was not destruction, but a plea: mercy. Again and again, she emphasized that before divine justice comes, mercy is offered first, that humanity is given time, that warnings are not punishments, they are invitations. In her diary, she wrote of fire, not merely physical flame, but a fire of purification, a fire of truth that reveals what lies hidden in human hearts. She saw souls standing at the edge of eternity, unaware of how close they were to decision. She described moments when she felt the sorrow of God over a world choosing pride over humility, power over repentance. Yet even in the darkest passages, one truth resounded: God delays judgment to give space for conversion. She spoke of a time when humanity would need divine mercy more than ever, a time of confusion, a time when fear would grip nations, a time when hearts would harden. She did not name countries, she did not predict specific wars, but she understood something about the spiritual anatomy of conflict, that wars begin long before the first strike. They begin in the human heart. Pride, fear, hatred, the refusal to forgive. And as we watch tensions rise between nations in 2026, as threats are exchanged and alliances tested, her words echo with unsettling relevance. Because what if global conflict is not only about territory or oil or security? What if beneath the political strategies lies a deeper spiritual fracture? Faustina believed that entire nations could turn either toward mercy or toward judgment, and that choice, she suggested, was never forced, it was invited. So now we must ask a question that transcends headlines and military briefings. What if she were shown our time?
And then, in the silence of prayer, the vision begins. Not with names, not with maps, but with a landscape. Saint Faustina Kowalska finds herself standing upon a vast stretch of desert. The air is dry, heavy, unmoving. Sand stretches endlessly toward the horizon, shaped by winds that have carved the earth for centuries. There is an ancient feeling here, a land that has known prophets, empires, covenants, betrayals, and blood. But something is wrong. The sky above is not blue, it burns. A deep crimson glow spreads across the heavens, as if the sunset has been frozen at its most violent moment. Smoke rises in the distance, not from a single fire, but from many. Pillars of dark gray spiral upward, staining the red sky even darker. The air trembles with distant shockwaves, like thunder without rain. The ground beneath her feet shudders. Far off, cities rise from the desert, silhouettes of towers, domes, and crowded streets. But they are not peaceful. The earth around them vibrates as if struck repeatedly by invisible fists. Windows shatter, sirens echo. The sound of explosions rolls across the sand like waves crashing against unseen cliffs. She does not see soldiers clearly. She does not see flags, but she senses confrontation, powerful forces clashing in the unseen realm before their impact is felt in the visible one. Then she sees the people. Families running through narrow streets, mothers clutching children, elderly men looking upward in confusion and disbelief.
young faces illuminated by the red sky, their eyes reflecting both fire and fear. Some kneel in prayer, some shout in anger, some simply stand frozen, unable to understand how quickly stability has dissolved. There is confusion everywhere. And yet, within the chaos, something deeper begins to reveal itself. The vision shifts upward, beyond smoke, beyond buildings, into a dimension not bound by geography. Faustina perceives shadows moving across the region like a dark tide. They are not human figures, but they carry weight, symbols of pride, resentment, vengeance. They whisper into hearts. They inflame wounds long unhealed. They magnify suspicion. They feed on fear. And opposite them, light. Faint at first. Small threads of brilliance piercing through the crimson sky. The light does not roar. It does not force. It waits. It flickers in homes where families gather to pray. It glows softly around individuals who choose forgiveness over hatred. It radiates from hearts that refuse to surrender to rage. Darkness pushes. Light resists. The two forces do not merely coexist, they struggle. The desert becomes a battlefield not only of weapons, but of wills. Faustina senses that what unfolds here is more than strategy or retaliation. It is a test, a moment of decision suspended between two outcomes. Above the burning horizon, she sees scales, vast, luminous scales hanging in the sky. On one side rests justice, heavy, immovable, precise. On the other rests mercy, radiant, patient, extending itself again and again despite rejection. The scales tremble. The cities continue to shake. The red sky deepens. But then she notices something else, something almost hidden within the smoke. Thin rays of golden light begin to spread from unseen sources. They travel across rooftops, down alleyways, through hospital corridors and quiet rooms where frightened souls whisper desperate prayers. The darkness recoils slightly, not defeated, but challenged. Faustina understands without being told, this land, this ancient desert, stands at a spiritual crossroads. What appears as conflict on the surface is the visible eruption of something long forming beneath. She does not hear a voice yet, only a silence that feels heavy with warning. The vision does not accuse one side. It does not declare a victor. It reveals a struggle between fear and trust, between pride and humility, between vengeance and mercy. The sky remains red, the smoke continues to rise, and the light and darkness continue their silent war over the hearts of millions. The vision has only begun.
As the vision deepened, the hazy desert landscape gradually sharpened into something more defined. Not merely this or that city, but symbolic forces clashing in a way that felt larger than life. Above the horizon stood two great eagles, vast wings outstretched, talons bared, beaks open in an eternal screech. Their feathers rippled like flames against the crimson sky. They faced each other without moving a muscle, frozen in confrontation. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Though no single nation was named in Faustina's vision, the symbolism was unmistakable. Throughout history, the eagle has been an emblem of power, ambition, and dominance, and in this vision, two eagles confronted one another in silent battle. Their silent stance seemed to carry the weight of modern superpowers locked in a deadly ballet of strategy and threat. Beneath them, the land quaked as if responding to their standoff. Across the sandy plains, another image formed, a blazing orb rising from the east, so fierce that it seemed as if the sun itself had fallen from the sky and taken human form.
It was not a warm sunrise, it was an orb of burning intensity, shining with resolve and unyielding spirit. Its light was not peaceful, it was challenging. This symbol, too, carried meaning, the ancient and persistent force from the eastern lands, shaped by centuries of culture, faith, resistance, and pride. On this symbolic ground, modern instruments of war appeared, though in the vision they did not shine with glory. There were sleek machines, jets that glinted like polished steel in the red light, missiles that seemed to hang motionless in midair like deadly watchers, and great armored vehicles whose tracks crushed the sand beneath them. These tools of modern warfare stood ready, but they cast long, distorted shadows that stretched like claws across the landscape. But in this vision, it wasn't the technology that spoke loudest. It was the human soul lurking behind it. For every machine, there was a heart ticking with uncertainty, a pilot wondering if their orders were just, a soldier questioning whether retaliation would bring peace or simply more pain, a civilian caught between fear and disbelief. In the eyes of those visible in the vision, the light was dim, not because they lacked courage, but because they were weighed down by doubt and sorrow. Above it all, in that otherworldly realm between sight and spirit, a voice, or perhaps a thought, emerged with quiet clarity. Justice is near, but mercy still waits. It was not a declaration of triumph, it was not a threat, it was a warning and an invitation, a juxtaposition that resonated deeper than any booming explosion or angry proclamation. In the symbolic landscape, the two great eagles remained unmoving, yet everything around them was in motion. Winds stirred the sand, flames flickered at the edges of cities, and distant figures moved as though caught between action and restraint. The burning orb in the east glowed intensely, a force of unwavering resolve, yet it was not without softness. Within its light, small sparks danced, moments of compassion, choices to protect the innocent, gestures of forgiveness offered even in the shadow of wrath. The vision did not show victory for one eagle over the other. It did not assign blame or righteousness to any symbol. Instead, it showed tension personified, the confrontation of power with consequence, dominion with resistance, aggression with fear. And woven throughout it all was the reminder that the war in human hearts, the struggle between compassion and condemnation, mercy and judgment, was as real as any clash of nations. The land trembled, not just from the threat of warfare, but from the weight of choice. For each symbolic force before her, Faustina understood one truth. When nations rise against nations, history remembers the battles, but eternity remembers the state of the human heart.
The vision does not remain fixed on weapons for long. As the missiles hover in symbolic suspension and the great forces glare at one another across the desert sky, the scene shifts again, deeper, beyond machinery, beyond strategy, beyond politics. Saint Faustina Kowalska begins to perceive something that cannot be captured by satellites or intelligence briefings. War, she understands, is never only about missiles. The missiles are merely the final expression. Beneath every launch lies a story. Beneath every retaliation lies a wound. Beneath every escalation lies a decision formed long before the trigger was pulled. In the vision, the modern weapons begin to fade slightly, becoming transparent, and behind them appear human hearts. Not individual faces, but collective hearts beating with powerful emotions: pride, fear, humiliation, vengeance, insecurity. National pride rises like a towering wall between peoples. It whispers, "We cannot appear weak."
It insists we must respond. It convinces leaders and citizens alike that dignity is preserved only through dominance. But pride, when untempered by humility, becomes blindness. Faustina sees leaders standing at tables of strategy, maps spread before them. Their minds calculate outcomes, alliances, deterrence levels. Yet above them, unseen threads pull gently at their hearts, threads of ego, legacy, historical grievance, the desire not merely to defend, but to prove. And then she sees something even more troubling: indifference. Far from the desert battlefield, millions watch through glowing screens. The conflict becomes a headline, a debate, a trending topic. Opinions form instantly, sides are chosen quickly. Outrage flares, then fades. The suffering of distant families becomes background noise. This too is part of the spiritual war. When human life becomes abstract, mercy grows weak. The vision reveals a world that trusts its arsenals more than its creator. Nations invest billions into defense systems capable of intercepting threats mid-air, yet invest little into healing mistrust at its roots. Scientists refine precision guidance, diplomats struggle to refine reconciliation. The symbolism intensifies. Great vaults open beneath the desert, revealing stockpiles of advanced weaponry. They gleam with cold brilliance, efficient, powerful, impressive. Yet the light they emit is sterile, lifeless. It does not warm, it does not heal. Above them appears a single radiant heart, luminous, wounded, yet burning with compassion. It pulses gently, extending rays of red and pale light across the trembling land. Faustina recognizes it instantly, the heart of divine mercy. The rays stretch toward the leaders, the soldiers, the frightened families, even toward those who shout for escalation. They are offered freely, without condition. But many do not see them. Some turn away, convinced that strength alone will secure peace. Others hesitate, torn between fear and faith. A few fall to their knees, grasping the light as if it were their final hope. Then once more the words echo in the stillness. Before justice comes, mercy is given. In her understanding, divine mercy is not weakness, it is not surrender. It is the final and greatest opportunity for conversion, for nations as well as individuals. Justice will answer violence, but mercy interrupts it. Justice measures actions. Mercy transforms hearts. The vision makes clear, if humanity continues to believe that security is forged only through superior firepower, then justice will eventually respond to that belief, not as revenge, but as consequence. Yet, if even now, amid threats and retaliation, hearts turn toward humility, toward repentance, toward restraint, mercy still waits. And in that waiting lies the fate of nations.
Just when the vision seems overwhelmed by fire and tension, something unexpected appears across the desert floor. At first, it looks like a faint silver line stretching over the sand, fragile, almost invisible beneath drifting smoke. But as Saint Faustina Kowalska looks closer, she realizes it is not a crack in the earth. It is a thread. And along that thread, beads, a rosary. It lies across the desert like a bridge between cities, between borders, between opposing forces. The beads are enormous, resting upon dunes as if placed there by unseen hands. They are not made of wood or stone, but of soft, radiant light. And each bead glows, not with blinding brilliance, but with steady warmth,
as though each represents a whispered prayer rising from somewhere in the world. A grandmother kneeling in silence, a soldier murmuring a Hail Mary beneath his breath, a mother clutching her children in a shelter, a priest lifting intercession for peace. Every bead pulses gently, releasing light into the red sky. The darkness does not vanish instantly. The smoke still rises, the tension remains. But wherever the light from a bead touches the sand, the ground becomes firm. Fear loses some of its grip. Rage softens slightly. Faustina understands this is not symbolic decoration. It is resistance. The rosary stretches so far that it seems to connect continents. Its thread crosses the sea, passes through homes, chapels, refugee camps, and quiet bedrooms where unseen battles of anxiety are fought on trembling knees. In the distance, for a fleeting moment, she senses the memory of a mission entrusted centuries earlier to Saint Dominic, the call to spread the rosary as a spiritual weapon in times of confusion and division. Not a weapon of destruction, but of illumination. Not an instrument of force, but of intercession. The vision does not shift away from Faustina. She remains the witness, but she perceives continuity, that in every age of turmoil, heaven has offered the same quiet remedy: prayer rooted in humility. The contrast is striking. Missiles are loud. Prayer is silent. Missiles leave craters. Prayer plants seeds. Modern warfare seeks to overpower an enemy. The rosary seeks to transform a heart, beginning with the one who prays it. As the beads glow brighter, the two great symbolic forces in the sky pause, not defeated, but unsettled. The scales of justice and mercy tremble once more. The light from the rosary touches the scales, and mercy seems to gain weight, not by diminishing justice, but by fulfilling it. Faustina sees clearly now. The true battlefield is not only the desert below, but the conscience of humanity. And in the darkness of 2026, a simple thread of beads stretches across the world, fragile in appearance, yet powerful enough to alter history. The question is no longer whether the rosary shines. The question is who will choose to hold it.
The vision reaches its breaking point. The desert no longer trembles from distant shock waves alone. It trembles as if creation itself is waiting. The red sky darkens at its edges. The great symbolic forces remain suspended above the horizon. The glowing rosary still stretches across the land, its beads pulsing like a heartbeat in the night. And then, before St. Faustina Kowalska, the landscape divides. Not physically, but spiritually. Two paths unfold across the desert. The first path burns. Along it, escalation unfolds step by step, retaliation answered with stronger retaliation. Words sharpen into ultimatums, alliances harden, pride refuses to yield. The two great forces in the sky collide at last, and when they do, the impact ripples far beyond the desert. The smoke multiplies. The red sky turns almost black. The strait closes. Markets collapse. Neighboring nations are pulled in, not by choice, but by consequence. Cities that once felt distant now feel the tremor. Refugees cross borders. Fear becomes global. On this path, justice advances, not as a sudden thunderbolt, but as the inevitable harvest of accumulated decisions. What was sown in suspicion is reaped in devastation. The scales tip heavily. Faustina sees souls along this path, not evil caricatures, but frightened, confused, wounded souls. Leaders burdened by history, citizens shaped by propaganda and pain, soldiers carrying orders they did not write. They tremble, not merely at explosions, but at the realization that the spiral may no longer be controllable.
Then she turns. The second path does not glow with spectacle. It begins quietly. A pause, a delayed strike, a softened statement, a channel of communication reopened. On this path, pride bends, not in humiliation, but in wisdom. Leaders choose restraint where retaliation would have been applauded. Diplomats speak when generals expect silence. Religious voices rise, calling not for victory, but for preservation of life. The red in the sky begins to thin. The rosary's light spreads more steadily. The great forces above do not vanish, but their tension eases. The scales remain present, justice is not erased, yet mercy gains space to work. Faustina sees souls here too. They tremble as well, because choosing restraint requires courage. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is risk. Dialogue is not surrender, it is discipline. On this path, nations still disagree. Wounds are not magically healed, but catastrophe is prevented. Both paths are real. Both remain possible. The desert stands at the intersection. Then, above the entire vision, a voice resounds, not loud, but undeniable. It does not shake the earth, it pierces the conscience. Before the final justice, I send mercy. The words do not cancel justice, they precede it. Mercy is not the denial of consequence, it is the last invitation before consequence becomes irreversible. Faustina understands, this moment is not about predicting which path will be chosen, it is about revealing that a choice exists. The souls she sees, leaders, soldiers, civilians across the world, all share in this trembling decision. Because escalation is not driven by governments alone, it is fueled by collective hearts. The vision holds its breath. The sky waits. History waits. And mercy, extended one final time, waits to be accepted or refused.
What does this vision mean for us, here, now, in 2026? First, it is not a prophecy. It is not a declaration that one specific event must unfold, nor a prediction tied to a date on the calendar. The Church has never taught that private visions replace human freedom or political responsibility. What Saint Faustina Kowalska reveals in this imagined scene is not a script of inevitability, but a mirror, a spiritual reminder. The Middle East may stand at the center of tension. The headlines may focus on Iran, the United States, and regional powers, but the consequences of escalation would not remain confined to one desert or one sea. In a globalized world, conflict radiates outward economically, politically, emotionally. We are all connected. Markets shift, alliances strain, refugees move. Fear spreads through screens into living rooms thousands of miles away. No nation is truly isolated from instability anymore. And yet, the deeper message of the vision is not about geopolitics, it is about the human heart. History is shaped not only by military capability, but by moral decisions. Wars are not prevented by weapons alone. They are prevented when pride yields to prudence, when anger is restrained, when leaders choose life over legacy. Divine mercy, in the spirituality of Faustina, is not sentimental optimism, it is transformative power. It calls individuals and nations to pause before consequences harden into tragedy. Mercy can redirect a sentence before it becomes an ultimatum. Mercy can delay a strike long enough for dialogue to breathe. Mercy can influence hearts in ways no negotiation table ever could. The vision suggests this: history is not yet sealed. The scales are still moving. And even in 2026, especially in 2026, mercy remains capable of changing the course of events if it is embraced.
As the vision slowly fades,
one image remains. The desert is still scarred. The sky is still dark at the edges, but the rosary continues to glow, bead by bead, and the red in the heavens begins to soften into a deeper twilight. The light does not explode across the horizon. It grows, quietly, steadily, patiently. This is where we stand, not as spectators of prophecy, not as powerless observers of distant nations, but as participants in the unseen battle that shapes visible history. If the message of Saint Faustina Kowalska teaches us anything, it is this: before justice falls, mercy is offered, and mercy moves through willing hearts. So tonight, wherever you are, I invite you to pause. Pray for peace in the Middle East. Pray for leaders on every side to choose restraint over retaliation. Pray for innocent families who fear what tomorrow may bring. And if you believe in divine mercy, type this in the comments as a sign of faith and solidarity. Jesus, I trust in you. Let it not be just words, but a prayer. Share this message with someone who needs hope in uncertain times, because awareness can awaken conscience, and conscience can influence decisions. The darkness in the vision did not vanish in a single moment, but the light was stronger. And as long as even one bead continues to shine, the night will never have the final word.